and welcome to the infinite void that is the Nightverb, Reverb, and me, Gabor. Hello, pedal show. My name is Gabor. Yeah, I just said that, didn't I?
Hey, I'm Alex. Welcome along. We're going to check out this Reverb today from Erica Synths. Please hit like and subscribe first up if you haven't already. Give us a thumbs up, ding that bell, and leave us a comment. Be muchly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Please do. And this is provided by Erica Synths. So this is what we would call a sponsored video.
Erica herself.
Erica herself
Yeah.
sent it to us. No, it wasn't Erica, but that's, I have no idea who Erica is actually. Yes, so, but this is a sponsored video, but just use your ears. It's a gorgeous reverb. Just use your ears and stop whinging and all that sort of stuff. Just use your ears. Sponsored video. So Alex.
Yo.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm fine.
Excellent. The Nightverb. It's a reverb with a sort of moth kind of looking thing on it. And lots of knobs and lots of reverberization.
Correct.
And it's pretty cool.
Right on.
So it's a desktop unit, and I know what a lot of people will say, but it's a desktop unit, make it 10 players, how should we use that? That's how they talk. You can either use it for recording at home on a desktop, or there's also foot-switchable options and MIDI options. We'll get into that later. Maybe less MIDI, but the foot switch anyway. So you can, if you use loop switches and stuff, you can have it in there somewhere on your pedal board and use the switches to switch stuff. We'll get to all that. So basically, it's a reverb ambient kind of thingy-dingy. And you can store presets, but you've got all the controls up here. There is not a whole lot of menu diving. It's pretty much what you see is what you get. Yeah, and should we just get into it and check out what it does?
Sounds good.
So there's going to be a little bit of talking because there's a fair bit of things to get through. Timestamps for everything below. And if there's anything in particular you want to know about this, leave us a comment and I'll try to answer it as good as I can. So basically, you've got a digital reverb with a whole bunch of controls. It looks like a lot of controls, but once you kind of get into it, it's not that bad. It's quite easy to get around. You also have this data encoder, which if you just turn it, you go through different presets. To engage a preset, you push down on it. So this is lo-fi metal, for example. You've got an input gain and an output gain. Now, the input gain varies rather drastically because it's meant to take just about any kind of input signal from guitars to synthesizers to modular stuff, which has got ridiculously high output. So this, you can put quite a lot of stuff into it. For guitar, you have to have it relatively high up.
Yep.
But yeah, modular stuff, you would turn it right down because it's way louder than anything else. You also have this little back button here, and if you press that, it basically goes into a kind of a menu where you can change some effect stuff. You can go to your MIDI stuff, you can set up a foot switch, and you can look at the system. Things like, for example, making the screen a bit darker, which is rather cool for when you're doing videos, what firmware you're using, USB stuff, all that sort of stuff. You also have a function in here called load last. So what that means is if it's off, every time you turn it on, it goes to preset 1.
Yep.
If you have load last on, whatever the last preset was that you had it set to, when you turn it back on, that's where it will start.
That's a cool feature.
You have a thing called pot catch. Now, which I think is a pretty cool thing as well. It's a digital thing with lots of controls. So when you're going between different presets, the controls will point into different directions to where they're saved at the preset. You can actually do a thing where there's 3 different settings. So pot catch off means if, let's say the size is that it's pointing that way, but it's actually on full size. If pot catch is off, it means as soon as you touch it, it skips to wherever it points to.
Yep.
You have a thing called pot catch off, which means it won't do anything until you get to where it's set.
Gotcha.
Then you can do changes. And then you also have a pot catch pop, which the display will actually come on. So if we select this, just to give you an idea what it does. So let's say we're on this and I want to change the pre-delay. There's actually a little display that shows you where it's set to. It's set to 35. And once you hit 35, now you can change it. But it tells you where things are.
Yep.
So you can have those 3 different settings. I think it's not a bad thing. Let's just leave it on pop one on.
Yeah, that's cool.
You also have a screensaver, which you can set to anywhere from 10 seconds to 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And what it does is it goes after 10 seconds, it goes to this.
I'll tell you about the setup in the meantime. We're going through a couple of UAD amp sims to do the stereo thing.
There's the screensaver. So it goes to like a Starry Night.
Yeah, cool.
Little lights. So that's just the screensaver thing.
Yep.
But you can turn it off. Let's turn it off because we don't need it. Oh,
That's cool.
but you got to actually... Oh, yeah,
And the amp sims are just clean plexi kind of sounds, so you know what you're hearing.
and then you can select it to the brightness. That's just a system thing. But we'll get into all the other stuff as we go along. Yeah, and the other thing for guitar players, it's the other way around. So that's your input, and that's your two stereo outputs. So you've got stereo ins, stereo outs, and a Footswitch control here as well, and MIDI in and out. You can set the MIDI out to be off, to be just out, or to be through. So if you use it in line with lots of other MIDI things, you can, you can chain it through. You also, with this, I've seen other demos. I haven't actually tried it myself. If you plug a keyboard into this via MIDI, you can actually the freeze function. You can assign pitch to it, and you can play the freeze with the keyboard.
Neato.
But this is guitar, so we're not doing it with that.
Should we just hear some presets for stuff?
Let's do a couple of presets.
So if you got this out of the box, what does it sound like?
This is preset number 1. Oh, and you have a bypass button here.
Just hear the dry tone.
And I have a feeling, because we're on it's infinite, when I turn this off, it's already there. Feedback was set to all the way up. You could tell with that. It's massive. Let's just try the second one maybe. Let's go, instead of infinite void, let's go the tempo. Also, the bypass does not have a spillover thing, so it kills it, bypass. Let's do one more. Let's go random. Let's go maybe not percussion. Let's go solo, number 12.
I did have a play earlier with that percussion one, and there's some really cool, like, roomy type sounds in here.
Okay. Okay.
It's Buster Square Wheels a bit.
Pretty late. So let's have a look at some of the controls, right? We'll do a little bit more playing later on, but let's check out the controls. So basically you have, the main thing is really, you've got this huge knob in the middle, which is the size knob, which pretty much goes, it's turn a pre-delay down, which goes from that.
Very roomy.
To that. So much bigger room. You also have a dry wet control, so you can go all the way dry. Or all the way wet, right? Now, there's a couple of things that work with the size. So first of all, you've got an early and late reflections. And, well, again, so that shows you where the preset is. The preset is set to here, to 28. But basically what this is, and they tell you about it in a manual as well, it's lots of little delays, lots of tiny little delays that kind of all mashed together to become a reverb, right? Which is what reverb technically is. You have early and late reflections. Early reflections meaning the reverberation that's closer to you in the room, and late reflections mean the reverberation that's further away in the room. You can set whether you want to emphasize the early reflections more or the late reflections more. So if you, for example, have quite a big room and I go to early reflections, it does this. So
swells into it
it
later.
sort of swells into it a little bit more. So now this also works together with shape. Now shape is the shape of the room that the reflection come in. So for example, if we go to late reflections and turn the shape down, it changes the way the reflections kind of bounce back. It's sort of, they work together quite well. So let's just put them both roughly in the middle somewhere. Now the other control you have is feedback. Now feedback is how long, so you have a certain size room and you have the reflections. Now the feedback is how long the reflections decay for. So you can have really short, hang on, I gotta go past where it was. You can have a big room, but really short feedback. So really short length of reflections. So the feedback is how long those little delay bits, those little reflections, how long they go on for. It's like feedback on a delay, right? So between those, so between early, late, shape, size, feedback, and dry, wet mix, so these in the middle basically, they give you sort of your space. Then you can dial in within that. So let's say we want a little bit of feedback, we want some later reflections, we want sort of that sort of shape. We can dial in a pre-delay. So pre-delay, and it tells you on here, it goes from 0 to 200 milliseconds. So from when you first hit a sound to when the reverb actually starts. So let's check that out. So you can have a small room, but with the reflections, the feedback kind of carrying the reflections into longer. Now you also have a stereo kind of width control. So if we're going all the way down, it's a more centered kind of sound. And as you turn it up, it widens the image. So it just gives you, if you listen to it with headphones or good speakers, you can hear it. So it makes everything bigger and wider. So I mean, that's basically the sort of main reverb features you've got. Now the other thing is you have a little bit of modulation you can introduce. Mm-hmm. So again, we got to go past what we were. So this, they actually call it turbulence within the space.
Yeah.
It's quite subtle, but you're adding a little bit of that modulation to. So maybe some feedback down, earlier reflections, bigger room. See if we can hear it. It's subtle, but it's definitely there. So it's called spin, right? So it's modulation. Cool. We can turn it all the way up. Now, the other really cool thing that you can do with this, and I think this is actually where you can really shape the sound a lot, is you have this high and low damp and bass and treble control. Now, bass and treble does what it says. It gives you bass or treble, so you can either boost or cut treble. So again, we got to go past. That's one of the downsides of that pop thing. So we put them both in the middle. Let's put all of them in the middle. Because then you neither cut nor boost, right? So everything is at 0. But then the cool thing is you can actually boost things like treble, but then dampen it. So you have treble, but you kind of get rid of the really high frequencies.
Yeah.
So let's just check out the bass and treble control first.
Cool.
It's lovely when it's that darker reverb, so you turn the treble down. But now, actually, these should be all the way down because 0 is down the bottom here. So let's say we crank the treble and it gets a little bit bright, right? Because it does get a bit bright. Let's put that all the way up. What can we do to kind of lessen the brightness, but still get that? Because often when you turn a treble down, it kind of becomes this darker reverb that sort of sits in the back.
Yep.
But maybe you want it to be a little bit more up front, but then the treble makes it too harsh. This is when high damp, for example, comes into play. So if we now, with the treble all the way up.
Yep.
I think it's quite pretty actually when you turn the treble up a bit and then it dampens. So you still have that presence of the reverb, but you don't have the harshness.
And it's totally different sound just to turn the treble down too.
Yeah, they're two totally different things. And it's the same with the low damp. So you can really crank the bottom end, for example, but then get rid of the harshness of it with the low damp. So you still have that weight, but it doesn't have that. It's not too much. I think they work really well together, and they're really, really cool. I like them a lot actually, and I think that really makes this reverb super versatile. Because I mean, it's nice, it's big, but it's sitting in the background.
That's always a trick with ambient stuff. Is
not to, it gets in the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's that basically. And then lastly, you have this freeze control. So you can basically, if you play something, it freezes the sound and then you play a dry signal over it.
Yep.
And so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. But that's, on the surface, that's pretty much everything, right? Now, the next thing you can do is we can go into here, we click back, and we go into, there's a thing called effects. So effects now, you have a couple of things here. Let's go all the way up to the top. You have a thing called dirty, on and off. So I think from what I gather is, you have with dirty off, it's a digital delay, like fairly pristine digital delay that creates the reverb. If you go dirty on, it adds a bit of drive to it by it's recreating a bucket brigade delay.
Yep.
So it's a slightly different sound. So if we're, for example, going from this now, this is the same sound we had before with dirty off. There's more to it, and it's not necessarily dirt, but it's a different sound because it emulates Bucket Brigade versus clean. So it gives it a little bit of a dirtier kind of sound to it. So if we, for example, now, just if we play around with some of the stuff. So this dirt on. It's just two different sounds, a little bit cleaner and a little more.
I feel like
different.
The dirty on setting simulates with your guitar sound a bit more. The other one feels like an effect, like an ambient.
Okay. Well, let's leave it on.
Machine.
Let's leave it on.
Sure.
Then you have analog mix on. Now, from what I gather is, I think if you have analog mix on, it saves your by preset where your wet dry is set to. If you have analog mix off, it bypasses it and it just whatever that's set to for all the presets. I think that's what it is. Then last you have, which is really cool, which is a thing called Morph.
Yeah, cool.
Now Morph is a thing where you can go between two different presets and it morphs from one preset into the other preset. And you can also select how long you want it to take. From 0.1 second to 10 seconds, that it morphs from one to the other. So if we go, so for example now, if we have morph off, right? Yep. And we're going back to here, and we're going from this sound now. It just goes from one sound to the other, right? But now if we're going into here, if we're going to effect,
cool.
and we turn morph on, right?
Yep.
Let's say you want morph to be 2 seconds, yeah? So now what happens is, if we're going from this sound now to, let's say, I don't know, concrete. Okay, let's start with this sound. So it morphs from one sound to the other. And you can go as long as, if you want, 10 seconds. And you can see there's a little line underneath it. So if we're going from this now, for example, to, I don't know, Endless GT. So, yeah, sorry, it's always there. So you can morph between two presets, and basically you've got up to 10 seconds that you can do it, and you can select, so you can select 10, 7.5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.5, 1, 0.5, 0.2, 0.1 or off. So if you have two sounds that you kind of like working together with, and maybe go from one part, from a verse to a chorus, or something, and you want to morph from one to the other, it's pretty cool. I think it's an interesting way of doing it.
See, that'd be a thing like if you're doing scenes for film school,
for example,
transitions,
yeah,
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for example,
neato.
And I mean that's effects, right? And then you have MIDI, which we won't necessarily get into. Maybe one thing we should have a look at now is foot switches.
Sounds like a plan.
So you go into Footswitch, right? Press data. Now, what you need, and I don't actually own a single button Footswitch, but it makes no difference. I have a dual button Footswitch that I got here, and all you need is just a normal guitar cable. So it's not a TRS cable or anything else. Single button Footswitch, normal guitar cable. You plug it into here, into the Footswitch input.
With you so far.
And now you can select what you can actually have 3 functions that it does. So you have a single tap, a double tap, and a hold function. And I'm pretty sure it's that, which we'll find out anyway. So you go into here, you can have a single tap. So for example, single tap, you can have bypass, right? So if we're now doing this single tap turns a bypass on and off.
It works
It
seamlessly.
Works. But if you can just do that, that's kind of boring, isn't it? So what we could also do is, go back. We can go into Footswitch, and we say, okay, we want a double tap function. What do we want? So now we can choose bypass. We could choose the freeze function. We could choose going forward to the next preset. We can choose going backwards to the previous preset. We could choose a random preset. Or another thing, which is called Magic, which we haven't gotten into yet, where it randomly creates a new reverb for you. So how about we want, and then the other, well, that's all you can do. And that's the same as a single tap. So let's do Magic, for example.
Yes,
right?
please.
And then we also have a hold function. So if you hold the button in, and I reckon hold, you've got less features there. So you can do bypass for just quick things, right? Or freeze. So I reckon let's choose freeze.
Freeze is a good option, yeah.
Okay, so now, single tap is bypass, double tap is Magic, which creates a whole new
world
patch, like a randomly selected knobs, and holding it in is freeze. So let's do Magic.
Okay. Cool thing.
So so that's that. The other thing you can do is you can go into here. You actually also, if you go into patch and click on that, there's a save as. There's a magic thing as well, so you can push it here and you can magic. So this magic did again. You can also in here you can save, rename things, sort the presets and everything. That's sort of under the patch preset. The other thing we can do if we're going into Footswitch. So for example, let's instead of now doing bypass, we could save it to. We want to go single tap is forward.
Yep.
Double tap is maybe going backwards with the presets.
Cool.
And let's just keep that. So, for example, now, single tap goes to the next, to and so on and so on.
Yeah,
so you can set, it's only a single preset, or single foot switch, but you can do quite a lot with it.
It's well functioned, yeah.
And I mean, it's just a single guitar thing. You can connect that to a loop switcher, for example, as well. And that can control all this sort of stuff. You also have MIDI, and with MIDI, you can actually, each one of the knobs on here has its own CC.
Cool.
So you can technically, for example, if you have a MIDI foot controller, or if you have, again, a loop switcher that does MIDI, you could, for example, connect a foot switch, like an expression pedal, and you can assign certain controls to an expression pedal, and so on and so on. We're not going to get into MIDI in this one. If you really want me to do a MIDI video, let me know in the comments below and send me lots of bribes, and I might do it. But yeah, I mean, that's basically that.
Cool.
There's a lot to it,
Yeah.
for kind of what it is. And I think the foot switch is quite usable, even though it's only a single foot switch.
Yep, no, that works well.
I mean, the one thing I'd love to maybe see was having a dual foot switch where one is, you can have bypass and the other one does all the multiple functions.
Yeah.
So you can have a separate thing for bypass. But again, if you're using a loop switcher, that may not be something that you necessarily need. The other thing I would love to see is bypass where there's trails. That's really the only other thing. But other than that, I think it's a really, really gorgeous sounding reverb.
Sweet. Should we finish off with maybe some little clips of other preset stuff?
Of some sounds, yeah, just
Yeah.
making up some sounds. Let's do that. And that was the Nightverb by Erica Synths. Big thank you to Erica and all her synth-loving friends for sending this out to us. I really like it.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things. Again, I did an unboxing video. You can watch the unboxing video up here. And after I turned the cameras off, I sat there for what I thought was 10-15 minutes, and it was maybe an hour and a half later, just mucking around because it's just these beautiful sounds, and especially if you have the stereo thing going. It just sounds really, really lovely.
Yeah, lovely. It's one of those things that's easier to drive because there's not too many layers of multiple layers of effect, control, blah blah blah.
It may look complicated with all the knobs, but it's really easy and quick to get your head around it. Yeah,
everything's labeled easily. It's not meant to be another pedal board effect unit.
No.
So that's the Footswitch does do quite a good job of getting that happening if you need to.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty nice.
Yeah, I like
all the sounds are lovely, of course.
Yeah.
So yeah, leave us a comment. What do you think?
Let us know if you have a Nightverb, or if there's any other reverbs that you think that do a similar sort of job. Let us know in the comments below. Big thank you to Erica and her synth friends for sending this to us. And yeah, see you in another video.
Catch you soon.